Having seen the basics of XML and what XML is all about, it's now time to turn our attention to how we can actually get SQL to return XML for us, and that's exactly what we're going to take a look at in this lesson. Now, as we're going to see, the bit of syntax that we're going to use to retrieve XML out of SQL Server is for XML, and one of the great things about retrieving XML from SQL is that you actually already have quite a bit of the skills necessary to do this. That basically what you're going to notice is it's going to be a normal select statement with the appropriate for XML options appended onto the end of it. SQL Server, of course, whenever we execute a query, is going to return our data in a tabular format. Well, what happens if maybe our application needs to see that data in XML? Well, fortunately, we can actually just tell SQL, hey, we'd kind of like this data inside of XML. And the syntax that we're going to see works with basically any kind of select statement that you might be putting together. The basics of for XML are as follows. It's going to be added to the end of our select statement, and we're going to notice that there's four main options. The first two, raw and auto, are to a certain extent automatic based on the format and the structure of our query. That the nice part about both raw and auto is the fact that it's very easy for us to add that onto an existing select statement. But you're going to notice that what we gain in ease of use, we lose in flexibility and power. That if I want more control over the attributes and the elements that are going to be created, then what I want to do is turn my attention to one of the full control options, and that's going to be either explicit, which, as we're going to discuss a little bit later, isn't really a popular way to do things, or by utilizing path. Let's start off by talking a bit about for XML raw. Now, the way that for XML raw is going to work is, again, we put it at the end of the select statement. It's automatically going to give us XML. But what we're going to notice is that by default, unless we specify something, each row that we return is simply going to have a tag name of row. There's not going to be any root element, and a root element is the containing element for the entire document. And all of the columns will become attributes. Now, if we want to change that behavior, what we can do is we can specify the name that we want for each row into the raw command. If we want to specify a root element, we can do that by using the root command. And then finally, last but not least, if we're not happy with the attributes, what you're going to notice is that we can sub that out with elements. Let's take a look at utilizing for XML raw. What I'm going to do is open up my Management Studio. I'm going to open up a new query window. I'm going to connect to the AdventureWorks database. And I'm going to say select, and let's just say, for now, PC name from production product category as PC, semicolon. Just make it real easy on ourselves. And what I want you to notice is that there's nothing fancy at all about this little query. You're going to notice when I execute this that sure enough, we get the normal results. Now what I want to do is I want to get this information back as XML. So what I do is I just go right before that little semicolon, and I just add in for XML raw. That's it. And when I hit execute, what you're going to notice is that we get the XML down below. Now, one of the things that the Management Studio is going to do for us is it'll automatically give us a little link for the XML, where if we click on it, it'll automatically open up inside of a new window to make it a little bit easier to read. Now, as promised, you're going to notice because I went with the default options, every single row that was returned is inside of a tag called row, and the actual value is inside of an attribute. Now, if I want to change this behavior, what I can do, just come back over here, is I can, first of all, change the name of the row that we're going to have. So let's say, for example, that I want this to be called product category. Then what I can do is I can just pass that into raw. When I execute this, what you're now going to notice is, sure enough, it's product categories the whole way down. If I want to specify a root element, I can do that by saying root, and then maybe product categories. And again, let's go ahead and execute this. And you'll notice that now everything is contained inside of product categories. And if I decide that I don't want attributes, but instead want elements, then I can go ahead and specify elements. And if I, once again, execute this, you're going to notice that name is now an element. Now, the last little thing that we can change here is the name that's being used for name. So, for example, if I maybe wanted that to be product category name, then what I could do is simply alias the column. So we just say as, and let's say product category name. And now, when I execute this, you're going to notice that sure enough, it's now using product category name. Pretty slick. Now the question becomes, well, what happens if we want a join? Well, as it turns out, with XML raw, our joins are going to be flattened. In other words, if we had the elements option, then every single column from all the tables that are being joined will become siblings. Without the elements, everything's going to become an attribute. Let's see this in action. I'm going to come back to the exact same query, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to add on PS name as, and let's say product subcategory name, and let's say inner join production product subcategory PS as PS, and we'll say on PC product category ID equals PS product category ID. Now what I'm going to do for starters here is I'm just going to highlight that top portion. What I want you to notice, just doing a normal join, and I'm just going to execute that, and you'll notice that we get the results that we would expect by just doing a join. If we bring back in that for XML down at the bottom, and we execute this, and I click on my little link, what I want you to notice is the fact that each one is going to have a product category, and then you'll notice that we've got our product category name and our product subcategory name. So what will happen is our joins are going to get flattened into really one level of a hierarchy. And just for completeness sake, let me go ahead and comment out elements at the end there. And what you're going to notice is that when I execute this time, that everything now just becomes an attribute. And just put it back to the way that it was.